So we're in Genesis 46, 1 to 47, 12. So Israel set out with all that was his, and when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in a vision at night and said, Jacob, Jacob. Here I am, he replied. I am God, the God of your father, he said. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. Joseph's own hand will close your eyes. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and Israel's sons took their father Jacob and their children and their wives in the carts that Pharaoh had sent to transport him. So Jacob and all his offspring went to Egypt, taking with them their livestock and the possessions they had acquired in Canaan. Jacob brought with him to Egypt his sons and grandsons and his daughters and granddaughters, all his offspring. These are the names of the sons of Israel, Jacob and his descendants who went to Egypt. Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob. The sons of Reuben, Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jachin, Zohar, and Shur, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah, Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. But and Onan had died in the land of Canaan. The sons of Perez, Hezron, and Hamel. The sons of Issachar, Tola, Pua, Jashub, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun, Sered, Elon, and Jaleel. These were the sons Leah bore to Jacob in Paddan Aram, beside his daughter Dinah. These sons and daughters of his were 33 in all. The sons of Gad, Zephon, Hagi, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodi, and Areli. The sons of Asher, Imnah, Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah. Their sister was Serah. The sons of Beriah, Heber, and Malchiel. These were the children born to Jacob by Zilpah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Leah, 16 in all. The sons of Jacob's wife Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. In Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim were born to Joseph by Asenath, daughter of Potipherah, priest of On. The sons of Benjamin, Bela, Becher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh, Muppim, Huppim, and Ard. These were the sons of Rachel who were born to Jacob, 14 in all. The son of Dan, Hushim. The sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillim. These were the sons born to Jacob by Bilhah, whom Laban had given to his daughter Rachel, 7 in all. All those who went to Egypt with Jacob, those who were his direct descendants, not counting his sons' wives, numbered 66 persons. With the 2 sons who had been born to Joseph in Egypt, the members of Jacob's family, which went to Egypt, were 70 in all. Now Jacob sent Judah ahead of him to Joseph to get directions to Goshen. When they arrived in the region of Goshen, Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive. Then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and speak to Pharaoh and will say to him, My brothers and my father's household who are living in the land of Canaan have come to me. The men are shepherds, they tend livestock, and they have brought along their flocks and herds and everything they own. When Pharaoh calls you in and asks, What is your occupation? You should answer, Your servants have tended livestock from your boyhood on, just as our fathers did. Then you'll be allowed to settle in the region of Goshen, for all shepherds are detestable to the Egyptians. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, My father and brothers with their flocks and herds and everything they own have come from the land of Canaan and are now in Goshen. He chose 5 of his brothers and presented them before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked the brothers, What is your occupation? Your servants are shepherds, they replied to Pharaoh, just as our fathers were. They also said to him, We have come to live here for a while because the famine is severe in Canaan, and your servants' flocks have no pasture. So now, please, let your servants settle in Goshen. Pharaoh said to Joseph, Your father and your brothers have come to you, and the land of Egypt is before you. Settle your father and your brothers in the best part of the land. Let them live in Goshen, and if you know of any among them with special ability, put them in charge of my own livestock. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in and presented him before Pharaoh. After Jacob blessed Pharaoh, Pharaoh asked him, How old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. So Joseph settled his father and his brothers in Egypt and gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramesses, as Pharaoh directed. Joseph also provided his father and his brothers and all his father's household with food, according to the number of their children. This is a really significant passage as we have been reading through the story of God's dealings with Abraham and his descendants. And God had made that promise to Abraham that he'd have a great big family, that he'd have a land, and he would know God's blessing. And through him, all the nations of the earth would be blessed. There is a sense in which through his seed Joseph that has happened as he has rescued Egypt from famine and the nations around too. But here we're given some very specific details about land and family. Right at the beginning of this chapter, God appears to Israel in a vision and says to him, it's okay to go down to Egypt. Israel or Jacob had not had happy times outside of the land of Canaan, where he knew he was supposed to be when he'd been on the run earlier from Esau for all those years, and God had directed him back. He knew that the promised land of Canaan was where he was supposed to be. His grandfather Abraham had not had a happy time in Egypt. In a previous family, he'd been tempted there to lie and deceive, and God had to step in on that occasion. And so going down to Egypt is not seen as a positive thing. Leaving the land seems to be counter to God's promises. And yet in God's very clear revelation here to him, he says, it's okay. This is for a time, and it's going to be part of my purposes in building you into a great nation. And I will bring you back again. It's only for a time. And then he gives us this tender promise that Joseph's own hand will close Jacob's eyes. He will die in the presence of his favorite son. This is important, both in terms of giving us an understanding that the family is going to grow, and that leads us into the list of the descendants of Jacob at this point, of who's going into Egypt, and there are 70 of them. When Moses leads the Israelites out of Egypt in 400 or so years' time, we're told there are something like 600,000 males. And it just shows how God fulfilled that promise in the coming years. And also the reminder that it was a temporary stay in Egypt, a temporary stay for the furtherance of God's promises, and therefore a tool of God's providence. What's fascinating as well then is that although Jacob clearly lives near to Pharaoh, it seemed when he'd revealed himself to his brothers, the news had very quickly traveled to Pharaoh's palace. But now the family of Jacob, as they travel down, are going to be assigned a portion in Goshen, because that's where the shepherds go, that's where the rich pasture lands are. And shepherds are detestable to Egyptians, and it's this way of preserving the identity of the Israelites rather than being sucked into the Egyptian culture. They're kept as a separate nation within Egypt. They're not assimilated, which has been one of the challenges with Canaan too. And so we see God's providence in both their occupation that keeps them with a separate identity, and also then God's provision for them. And it is just worth bearing in mind, isn't it, that as we delve into the individual stories of these characters, it's always part of the bigger picture. And that's true for us too. We long for God's dealings in our own lives, and we're concerned to follow him. We want to see him actively at work in our lives, but we have to remember that our lives are part of that bigger picture, the bigger picture of Jesus building his church, preparing for his return, and that our lives are caught up in that story. We're privileged to be part of this kingdom, and we need to be reminding ourselves of that bigger narrative constantly, to remind ourselves where we fit. I just think it's particularly encouraging this morning for us to be reminded that God's providence can take us out of what seems to be the obvious place of blessing, and actually provide for us in those circumstances. And particularly in this time of pandemic, particularly as we've not been able to meet physically as a church for so long, it just doesn't seem to be the right circumstances for growing the church. And yet, in God's providence, sometimes that is the way things work. And actually, if you listen to something of the national picture at the moment, many churches are reporting ones and twos who have come to faith in this time of pandemic. And that's just encouraging that there's this slow growth through this period that doesn't derail God's purposes. Sometimes actually God derails the normal in order to further his purposes, and we can trust him through that, and remember his promises being fulfilled. And as we watch that happening through these chapters in Genesis, we can have confidence for our future and our lives in the days to come too.